Lend me your ears.
This nation will rise up.
This is the Awesome Health Podcast. Guys, welcome to the Awesome Health Podcast, episode number 1. Wow, this is awesome. The first interview I've done for the Awesome Health Podcast. Incredibly exciting for me to launch this project. Also a little bit nervous and apprehensive. Lots of ums and ahs, I'm sure, are coming across in what I'm delivering to you guys. Certainly if you listen to episode 0. My apologies for that. I can only hope it's going to get better. I'm going to get better at delivering and better at public speaking, and that's one of my goals for 2019. So stick with me, please stick with me. You can slate me on social media as long as you keep listening. We have got Adam Sansbury. I think I said that right. Adam Sansbury, even, on this episode. He is the plant-powered PT. Awesome bloke. And this episode is really exciting. I didn't know Adam much before recording with him, but he's got an incredible story. He really has. He's overcome some huge medical problems and some huge abdominal intestinal surgeries, which we discuss and we dive into, and that's really interesting. His journey to finding health, finding meaning in being a vegan, why he's a vegan, his approach to health and well-being, and the transformative process that he's been through from being quite ego-driven. I don't think you'd mind me saying that. Quite ego-driven in the first instance, and doing some sports modelling, male modelling, to what's much more of a centered human being now, and someone who takes their health really, really seriously and empowers others to do the same with his unique approach. Awesome bloke. Loads to talk about. We could have gone on for hours and hours. We dive into it, we get into the weeds, and hopefully you guys are able to pull some real gems. I know there are lots there, and I'm intrigued to see your feedback to the podcast with Adam. So listen up and let's jump straight in to the plant-powered PT. Adam, thank you very much for coming all the way down to Brighton and recording with me.
Pleasure, mate. Really good to be here.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. Always like an opportunity to get out of London.
Great,
fresh
great.
air in my lungs.
Great. So you've heard a little bit about Adam, and now we're going to dive straight in to your story, if that's okay, Adam, and just sort of understand where you've come from and where the journey you've been on in terms of your health and fitness. And I know you've had some struggles, some surgery, some ups and downs, and it's sort of an ever-evolving journey. So I don't know where feels natural for you to start.
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Adam Sansbury, basically also known as the Plant Power PT, and I kind of like to specialise in showing men and women how they can get fit, strong and healthy on a plant-based diet. Trying to, show people how they can transform not only their bodies, but also the planet potentially as well. So that's where my passion lies now. I guess where do we start? Go back to the beginning of my PT career, I guess, which is 10 years ago this year. I started as a personal trainer back in 2009, and also it was the first year I took part in a fitness modelling show, because I was always did a little bit of modelling, professional modelling before that, and wanted to know. Actually, I've jumped ahead a bit. 2006 was actually when I had my first operation, because I'd been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. So sorry about that. I'll jump back to that in a second.
Wait. So most of the guys I chat to, in your sort of childhood and upbringing, was health and fitness a big part of your life? Did you have a sports background? What was your intro?
I was a healthy kid. I was always outdoors. I was the one playing with mates, kicking a ball around, climbing a tree. My brother was the one reading books, making models, building radio control planes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I played a lot of tennis when I was a kid. Had a chance for county coaching. But it just came into my life at a time where I wanted to play with friends more than I wanted to get too serious about tennis. Played a little bit of football, Sunday league for a while. And then kind of really just, I had a fascination with training and the I guess the male physical form from an early age. Growing up in the 80s, you had like, obviously Arnie, Sly Stallone, Dolph Lundgren, Van Damme, all those guys that you kind of look up to. So I was kind of quite fascinated by the front of the bodybuilding magazines, Men's Health. In the early days, Men's Health didn't used to have like any English models on it. It used to be all US models. And they were always very iconic images on the front cover. And I remember as a kid, I struggled with my weight a little bit in my sort of early teens, and got teased on a couple of occasions by teachers, which kind of, I think, set in motion for me this feeling that I never wanted to be the fat kid.
Right.
And I always wanted to take control of my body, basically. So I think, although it was a negative situation, it definitely became like a positive thing in my life. And I think then, so that's kind of where my interest in the gym and improving my body kind of came from. But then it was many years. That was early teens, like I said, and it wasn't until I was about 30 that I decided that I want to become a personal trainer.
Right.
And that was, like I said, that was 2 years after I'd been actually diagnosed with something called ulcerative colitis, which is the ulceration of the large intestine.
Yeah.
I'd got diagnosed in August 2005 and put on anti-inflammatory steroids. And I'd been on those for like 5 months. And the disease became steroid dependent. So every time I phased off the steroids, I'd get a flare up.
Okay.
And it got to a really bad point in that it basically blocked off my whole large intestine, and they had to operate. They had to go in for an emergency operation at Guy's and St Thomas's in London.
Okay, so just to break it down really basic, so you had ulcers on the inside of your intestines, and you were your body was addicted to the steroids in order to control the inflammation of those of that condition.
Yeah, absolutely.
And without it, you just had a complete flare up.
Yeah.
And then it got worse.
Well, it got to, so basically so ulcerative colitis creates ulceration on the intestinal lining, bowel lining, and it got so bad that it had created something called polyps.
Yeah.
And they're like a bunch, like I'm sure you know with your background, like a bunch of grapes, basically. So this bunch of grapes had grown through all the different levels of inflammation and damage that had happened on my intestine. They'd grown to this grapes and actually blocked off the large intestine. And the doctors and surgeons at the time, they didn't know what it was. Although I got diagnosed a few months previously with UC, because it was doing stuff inside my body that they'd never seen before, they then started to think, is it UC? Is it Crohn's? Is it cancer? So the other two were on the table, and I had biopsies and stuff. So it was kind of touch and go for about a week while I was waiting for the biopsy results to come back as to actually did I have cancer or not?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty monumental moment in my life, I think, sitting next to your hospital bed when the doctor comes in and says it's ulcerative colitis.
Yeah.
The best of the three, kind of,
so,
if you're going to pick one of them.
And how old were you?
I was 28.
28.
Yeah, so it came at a point in my life where I'd been modelling, very focused on improving my body, six-pack. It was all about the external look. A month before, I'd shot the cover of Healthy for Men magazine, which is the GNC magazine. I'd been in the best shape I'd been in, and then a month later, I've got pictures online, you can see them. Just lost all muscle mass. When you have any form of digestive illness or abdominal surgery, everything just shuts down, and your body starts cannibalizing itself.
So from the outside, everyone looking in would have seen this perfect body.
Yep.
And on the inside, you're actually really unwell.
Yeah.
Wow. How did that impact you?
Psychologically? So yes, actually, I've just written a book recently, and I talk about this in my book. And there was a distinctive point after my first operation, where me and my brother used to fight like cats and dogs, but there was always a lot of respect there.
Me too.
It's just you love and hate each other, and he was in the hospital. and I was kind of having a bit of a woe is me moment, oh, why has this happened to me? This is it now, that's it, I've got to stop modelling, I'm not going to be able to do this ever again, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And my brother just turned around and says, what are you on about, Ad? You control it, don't let it control you, like that.
Yeah.
And it was like, the moment he said that, this total epiphany just went off in my head, and it just changed the trajectory of how I dealt with that situation, and actually how I've dealt with probably every situation since.
Yeah.
So it was a really big moment for me.
Wow, that's really interesting, because I've had not illnesses to that level, but I've certainly had a similar interaction with my brother in terms of kind of that, when you're in a really low and they're just one or two words and bang, it sort of changes your whole trajectory and you're on a different path.
Definitely, and I think it comes from someone who can say stuff to you in a very blunt way that no one else can.
Yeah.
That kind of half winds you up, also half gets your attention and your respect. And maybe it was that kind of combination that just kind of shook me out of that state I was into. So you know what I'm
relate
about,
exactly
right?
that kind of.
They're the one person in your life that can press the button.
The buttons, and you really pay attention as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
He's done it twice, and he was. It was something that he said to me that led me into choosing to do personal training and stuff as well.
Really?
So yeah, that was like I said, that was a couple of years down the line. That was after being ill. But yeah, from what he said to me in that hospital bed that day, really made a big difference to how I dealt with stuff.
So fully recovered.
Well, what happened was that emergency operation, they removed part of the large intestine, and I had a colostomy bag. So of course you can imagine the kind of psychological effect that has on you.
28. You were a model.
Yeah.
Looking awesome.
Yeah.
Good looking chap. And next thing you've gone through lots of surgery.
Yeah.
You've lost all your muscle.
Yeah.
And you're wearing a colostomy bag.
Yeah. You got a bag stuck to you. You can see part of your small intestine coming out of you when you empty it and stuff.
Can't fathom it. Yeah.
And you're like how? Well, what do I do from here? But I've got a tattoo that I've put on myself, and it's like, you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. And
wow.
A lot of people have always said to me, "Wow, it's amazing how you dealt with it. I would never have been able to deal with it as positively as you has." And I was like, it's not until you're put in that condition and that situation that you actually realise how much inner strength you've got. And I think we all have that ability, but it's not until we have these moments of adversity that take us to a point where we have to delve deep. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
couldn't agree more. I think, what you've just said is so important for the audience to hear. You've got to face adversity to really understand who you are.
Yeah.
You couldn't have put it better.
Definitely, and I talk about it a lot with relating it to strength training or any form of training in the gym, right? You kind of, and like there's so many metaphors in terms of strength training that you can take into life, in terms of we need an element of stimulation or resistance in order for us to grow. And if we don't have anything to resist against, then we don't grow. And it's that kind of saying, nothing grows inside the comfort zone, basically. So yeah, I think it's really important. And in the gym, if you don't have the resistance and the stimulus in terms of the weights you're lifting, then your body doesn't have anything to actually adapt to. So it's important to have that kind of that resistance in the gym to invoke that adaptation. And the same goes for everything in our life. I think the moment we start trying to make everything easier and more simple for ourselves, we prevent ourselves from being able to delve into a kind of a deeper reservoir of sort of energy and positivity, basically.
Well, it's an incredibly powerful story.
Yeah. So to finish that bit, I had the emergency operation, had the colostomy bag, and then because it had damaged my bowel to such a point, they had to remove the bowel completely, because it puts you at something like 10 times risk of getting bowel cancer.
Yeah.
So 6 months later, I had the bowel completely removed, and they created something called an internal pouch for me, which is where they bring down the small intestine and loop it back on itself. To create like a holding area, so food and everything doesn't just fly straight through you, basically. So you absorb some of the nutrients. That was the big operation. The second one, that was like a 5-hour operation. Took number of weeks to kind of recover from again. In between all of my operations, though, I was losing muscle mass, but I was getting back into the gym and building it back up. So this is kind of where my knowledge of the body and I guess the fortitude that you need to transform your body and with the process that you go through of building it back up. And so I guess every time I lost the muscle and built it back up was also, I was learning a lot about my body and about how it all works, how all those systems work.
So,
and then the third operation, they just reconnected me. So I was able to kind of go to the toilet again normally. So at the ripe old age of 29, I was learning to sit back on the toilet again.
Wow.
It was just quite bad.
I mean, yeah.
And it feels like a lifetime ago now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm 41 this year. It's 12 odd years ago. So
wow.
So.
Okay. Before I forget, so I just want to dive in. So the two sort of mindset questions that popped into my head are what sort of kept you going during those surgeries, and what kept you going in terms of going back to the gym? How did you overcome kind of the negative emotions and fears and concerns that must have been present in your mind to actually get up and go and train when you were still fairly unwell?
I think it's acceptance. I think rather than resistance, and I think I accepted where I was. I accepted that, okay, this is the body I've now got. This is the colostomy bag. This is my reality right now. So there's no point wasting any amount of time crying about it, worrying about it, thinking what if, why me and all this. And again, from those words that my brother said, it just, flipped a switch in me and was just very much like, okay, this is what I've got. How can I make the best of it?
Wow.
Kind of thing, and I think, and then getting back in the gym, I've always enjoyed a challenge. So getting back into the gym, and I remember getting on I never used to do a lot of machine training, in the gym, but because I'd lost so much muscle mass and strength, I was sat on the chest press machine, and using the very bottom couple of plates. It just felt so alien lifting weights when I'd been lifting weights kind of for years before that. The Rocky soundtrack. A bit of Eye of the Tiger really kind of helped inspire me and gave me that, I guess, sod this.
Wow. So that's incredible. Yeah. I love it. I love the story. And what I'm hearing is you chose not to be a victim when the situation was so shit that I think lots of people, perhaps myself included, I've never been in that situation, might have chose to sort of lay on their laurels. Yeah. And was that an instant, straightforward decision that you made consciously, or did it take some time? Did you start off thinking, oh, woe be me, and then have that transformation, or was it did it simply just flick on that conversation with your brother?
Yeah, I mean, I'm. Do you know what? I'm sure I had moments of like, fuck, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
I'm sure I did, but I don't remember them ever taking that much of my attention and energy, and it was definitely what he said to me. Like, it definitely had a massive impact, an immediate impact on me. And then I think that mentality just sort of snowballed, really. Yep. And I think more people and friends and family being like, wow, you're dealing with this so well, probably gave me the strength to keep doing that. I mean, that could have in a way gone the other way. It could have maybe brushed things under the carpet.
I think that's what we see a lot.
That's a dangerous thing,
that's what we see a lot, is people saying, oh, you're doing well, and then that initial response, well, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that spiral.
Like you can say to anyone, and then holding that in, and then that becomes a problem. Then, doesn't it? Yeah.
And that's kind of suffering in its truest form, isn't it? Refusing to accept kind of what people are actually saying around you. But again, the sort of takeaway there, I think, is you it was all based around a decision that you made based on one conversation that changed. You made a choice, and you kept going on that path. That's strong, really, really strong.
I think it was the choice along with the, like I said, that acceptance.
Yep.
It's just like, okay, this is where I am. I'm going to make this choice.
Yep.
It's not so. And I think that whole experience in my life has very much given me I don't tend to moan about stuff that much,
I'm sure.
it's just,
you've been there.
There's some things that just aren't worth wasting your energy on, and the whole experience, I think, has taught me as well to realize situations that are potentially going to be quite stressful, so I don't get involved with them or step away from them. I've become much, I think, better at managing my stress than I was back then. But just going back to that, that point we were just making, at the time when I was recovering, I was going on the internet and going into forums, to talk to people who had similar things, right? And one thing I started to notice quite soon on in these forums was that everyone was organising days out together, community events and stuff, but I started to see it very differently. It started to look like all of these people were suddenly classing themselves as different or not good enough to be considered a valid, normal member of society. And it felt to me with us that I was very lucky that I've got a lovely family and friends, and I was like given lots of love and support by them. So if someone doesn't have that, then obviously they're going to require community support and stuff. But it did just start to look to me like everyone was they'd gone, well, this is my label, this is who I am, and this is me, sort of thing. Where I was just like, well, this is just the situation I'm in right now. This is how my body is. I'm still a valid member of society. I can still hang out with people who don't have colostomy bags and who don't have this illness. And so I actually withdrew out of those groups quite quickly once I started to sort of see that. And I think it was that not willing to sort of dwell on that and focus so much on that being my identity.
And that's the word I was going to talk about, identity, because yes, identity can be really powerful or really negative because it's such a strong force. We all want to be part of a tribe.
Totally.
But it sounded like that community, it did have some benefits, but it was isolating itself, which meant that there wasn't much of an integration back into what we might consider a normal.
Definitely. I think those groups will be really helpful for people initially, but then there's a point in which you should be looking to move away from that and move yourself, transition back into kind of society, if you like, or normal life, whatever that is for you.
And I mean, I think, and what's just sprung to my mind is you had a really strong identity around sort of health and wellness and the support that kind of probably pulled you towards that way as well. And that is powerful because we all sort of live within tribes, don't we? Groups within groups, and that's the identity within those groups is so strong that it will stop us doing actually what we want to do sometimes. And some of the guys that I coach, the first thing I question them on is your friendship circle, what your closest relationships. What's the identity because we all have different identities, don't we? We all have different masks for every single person we meet. What are the masks? What are the identities you're showing up with in your closest little circles? Because that is the strongest pull. And if those are negative, if those are saying don't exercise, don't eat right, come to the pub, burgers, fries, then it's so hard to detach from that. It really is.
Absolutely. And I'm finding it again now in this period of my life. So fitness, being a personal trainer, 10 years as a personal trainer, that's my label. And last year I had a couple of months of proper crisis of being like, I've got this label of personal trainer, and I think a lot of other trainers and coaches probably feel like this as well, in that everyone else thinks I need to be the strongest, the fittest, the best shape. I'm always training. I always in the gym. That's my passion. That's my focus. And I got to just a point that was just feeling quite burnt out by it all. And I just like, I don't want to train today, but I feel like I should be training because that's what everyone else expects me to do. And I had a couple of workouts where I was in the gym and I had a focus on what I was training, but I was sat there and I was thinking, this is the last place I want to be. I do not want to be here today. And then I had this, then in my mind, I was just like, oh, wow, I can actually make a choice. And it doesn't actually relate to whether I'm a good personal trainer or not. I can just choose that today I'm not going to train, and that's fine. But then that led me into like probably 2 or 3 weeks of just very much like, I'm not training just because I don't want to. But it turned out to be a good thing. because it was a bit of a break that I needed from it. It kind of got my enthusiasm back for everything. But it's very easy to get caught up in that label. And, I'm finding now with veganism and plant-based movement and stuff like that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
We'll come on to all that. But in terms of just the label side of it, suddenly everything that I'm doing is about plant-based, is about veganism. And it's almost like, you almost get sick of it a little bit sometimes. It becomes so much. It becomes so encompassing on what you're doing and who you're all about. And you just kind of, you want to step away from it sometimes. I
think it's very easy to get caught up in the labels, isn't it, really?
Definitely.
And the other thing I was going to say is I feel you on the kind of the routine of things, because that can really suck you into a kind of negative mind space sometimes. And I was chatting to a guy, a coaching client of mine, and he was coming to me for the mindset stuff, which I think is so much more powerful.
Yeah.
And his angle was he was actually fit and healthy, but he was going to the gym to hide.
Right.
So it's just an interesting kind of.
Yeah, we all use these things to give us different comforts and supports, don't we?
Yeah, and coming from a military background, you meet so many guys that do that. They train, and they're not dealing with their relationships with their partners or their kids, whatever. Do you know what I mean? They want to be with the lads, training, fighting, all that stuff. And it's not. You've got to you've got to look at the whole picture.
Definitely, yeah.
You really have.
Yeah, it's like that kind of masculine and feminine energy. It's just like if you're too one side, then
for sure.
That's the pressure for guys these days, and I think especially for fathers as well now. The dad's got to be the strong, capable provider, but at the same time, has got to be emotionally available for their kids. I mean, I haven't got kids, but this is what I, seem to be able to see everywhere.
I think
has to have that emotional availability so that the kids don't grow up feeling like they've not been attached or connected with their father. So
it is, it's really there are a lot more demands on guys now, I think, and we're both guys. I don't think it's any different for women.
No, not at all.
Don't think we're saying that one's different to the other. I think there are a lot more demands on women as well, and it's just a much more sort of integrated approach to everything, isn't it?
Yeah, I think men and women are just having to come into a little bit more balance.
Yeah,
in terms of their masculine and feminine energy.
I think, I couldn't agree more. But I also think because of our history, we don't really understand what that means.
No.
Certainly, Northern European, very masculine, machismo background, history, fighting, all that sort of stuff. And we don't really understand the yin and yang. And what that means, that sort of something that they've had in the Eastern worlds for so long, and they've understood it, and they've sort of cherished the yin, they've cherished the feminine within the masculine as well, and the feminine for itself, and we haven't, No,
definitely. It's funny. I'm just nearly at the end of season 5 of Vikings.
Oh, okay. Don't know.
Amazing. It was obviously it's an incredible series, but it's all based on historical fact as well. About the Vikings.
Yeah.
Incredible, strong, but very violent and destructive, race of people. They did incredible things, but there was war and violence at the bottom of it that I think ultimately ended up destroying them all. Because they weren't in balance. And I think. Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's jump forward because we've got so much to get through, and I know that you've got so much value to add to this audience. So the question I ask all my guests is, what does health mean to you?
So for me, health means optimization. I think of the individual's mind and body in a way that doesn't, in a way that reduces trauma and suffering, or doesn't kind of negate the rest of the world going on around you. That's what I'm trying to say. So is that I think what's going on at the moment, we have all these arguments about what diet's right, what's diet's wrong. My diet's better than your diet. Mine's keto. I'm better than you. I'm vegan. Vegan's everything. It saves the world. All this. Paleo's the best way and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy because it's more important now that we start looking beyond just the individual's health. And I think we need to say, well, that diet could be healthful for the individual, but actually, okay, which is the best form of living and eating that's going to be better for the environment, potentially, for the collective health, the global health, for animals, for nature, and trying to kind of work in a more symbiotic way with nature and stuff. So I think that's where we need to start extending what our perception of health is. I think
Yeah.
I don't think we can be truly healthy ourselves if the rest of the world isn't healthy. And actually, what's the point in that anyway? Because it's not going to last very long.
Yeah.
So I think I think we need to all start having a little bit of more mindfulness, if you want to put it like that, of everything else around us and how our choices and decisions are affecting these other things. And so I think, totally super important that we work on individual health, mind, body, spirit, but at the same time, not to the detriment of the world around us, I think. And I think that's how we make a big difference, and I think that's how we can all make a big impact. If we all start doing that, then we're on to a winner, I think.
Yeah. I think that's an awesome answer to the question. So you're coming at it from a symbiotic, environmental sort of ecosystem perspective. Yeah. We're a piece of an ecosystem, not to forget that, and that's how we can define health.
Yeah. The further we move away from nature, the worse our health gets.
Yeah.
That is the reality of it. And so many people moving to the urban environment because they're chasing the money. But the urban environment removes you from nature, removes you from our natural way of being. And all the unnatural light, the exhaust fumes. It's just, and I think more and more people in those urban environments are now becoming more nature deficient. And then you start seeing more kind of problems in terms of stress, mental health, and all these things. I know I suffer from SAD. I totally, when the clocks went back or forward back in October, I almost felt a switch flip in me in terms of feeling more depressed. My mood went down. So I know I suffer very much from something like SAD. So. I'm started using one of those light lamps.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, if we're not getting out into nature as much, we're not getting all the, in terms of SAD, getting light into our bodies and fresh air and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think, and layer on top of not just the sort of urban jungles that we've created, but your routine, indoors, and also this hyper-connectedness. Social media. This kind of false, what I would call the false relationships, the false connectedness with a sort of piece of technology more than anything else, and kind of it's the pace of it, the speed of it all. Bang, 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 bang. I think that's really
definitely, and I think that's where we're going at the moment. I certainly feel it myself. I have a love-hate for it. There's this feeling of, well, I kind of need it, and it's a very good tool for spreading a really positive message, for getting the word out about what I'm all about and what I do for a business, bringing people into my business potentially. But on the flip side of that, I know that, I feel the negative effects of the attention, the distraction that it has on me, and and that feeling like there's so many things I've got to do now and check and post and stuff. I think it takes my focus away sometimes from actually what my main purpose is. Sometimes.
Well, that's what it's designed to do.
Yeah.
Literally billions and billions of dollars designed to distract us from what we're trying to do. Our focus. And that's my real bugbear is the fact that when you're on social media, it's an amazing tool. But you're plugged into the brands, you're plugged into this, you're plugged into some of the best behavioral psychologists on the planet, finding ways to distract you. And ain't no one getting around those people and that's that way of doing things, because it's too it's almost too clever. It's gonna work things out. If you think you can beat the system of social media, you'll fail, because it's hardwired into us to have those, to do those things,
and they're changing all the algorithms behind the scenes on a daily basis with their massive teams of people. I saw this great post the other day, and it was about dopamine and serotonin, and you should actually focus on chasing serotonin, not dopamine. And dopamine is the kind of that dose of dopamine you get, that hit of dopamine you get when someone likes one of your photos, or you're looking for external validation. Whereas serotonin is the neurotransmitter that is the happy hormone that comes from internal validation. So the better you're kind of feeling internally, your health internally, how your belief and your self-confidence and stuff, that's what gives you that serotonin release and gives you the happy hormone. Whereas everyone's chasing the dopamine hit, which is that external validation. Someone's liked my picture, someone loves what I've said today, someone, but the dopamine becomes quite an addictive response.
That's of course it is,
and that's what hooks people in. And we all know that's how it's all built now. It's to get that response from people.
And I know that those dopamine responses and receptors are what the opiates hook into as well. So it's the most powerful self-creating drug that we've got, and it can't be replicated even with heroin. Do you know what I mean? That's the level we're at. So and there's so much science behind it. Let's not get down that rabbit hole. But okay, so jump forward let's jump into plant-based.
Okay.
You're 100% plant-based, and you're obviously, from what you've said, that's partly your health, as partly your belief system around the environment as well. How did it start? How did it manifest for you?
So for me, so just from the back, the reason I live the way I live is because I want to live a life that reduces the trauma and suffering that it leaves behind. Okay, that's the bottom line. That's everything that I'm kind of about. As long as what I'm doing is reducing the trauma and suffering. Veganism's not perfect, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And I always talk to people about progress, not perfection. It's better that billions of people are striving for progress rather than a few thousand that are perfect. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think I think that's where the movement needs to go now, is to kind of addressing that, being less judgmental and being more flexible and kind of encompassing, and bringing more people in who are willing to try plant-based for a few days of the week maybe, and then go back to their other habits. I'd love more people to be 100% plant-based, but I'm also a realist, and I think it's good for people to work towards progress, not perfection. So for me, ethics was the reason why I went plant-based. It wasn't related to health. Everyone thinks, because of my background and passion about nutrition and stuff, it was health focused. But when I looked into it, when I started going down that road, I guess all my life I've been quite good at being devil's advocate and sitting on the fence. And at the point where I was making that decision, I had the new plant-based movement that I was looking into joining was all like, it reduces cholesterol, heart disease, it cures all these diseases, it's the best thing for your health, it's the best way of eating. And then there was obviously the world that I'd been part of for many years that was just like, meat's good for you, meat gives you all these different proteins, all these different fats, these are all good for you for doing this, that and the other. And so I knew there was an element of truth with both of them. And I knew there was studies to back up both lines of thought, and there's studies to back up any bias that you can come out with. Like, we can all find a study to confirm our habits, like whatever that might be. So I couldn't really to make this huge decision. I couldn't base it on something that I didn't truly believe in, because I don't truly believe veganism is 100% right for 100% of the people. Likewise, a heavy meat-based diet, I don't believe is optimal health for 100% of the people. So for me, I needed to find a reason that was kind of more black and white. And when I started thinking and looking at like the growth of the population over the last 100 years and how crazy that's actually been, and then thinking just logically, we live on a finite planet. that has a finite amount of space.
Mm-hmm.
We're farming animals in really unnatural conditions. We've taken a living being and we're turning it into a commodity that's coming off a conveyor belt, and we're not giving it any form of respect of its life and its right for life. And so when I started thinking about all these things, like I said, the growth of the population, the increasing demand for meat, that means that the more demand for meat means that we're going to have to farm more animals. We're going to have to farm them more intensively with less space, which means worse conditions for the animals. And then when you start thinking like this, you can start seeing how everything is just going to lead out of control. And then when I started thinking about free range and the grass-fed thing, it's all very well and good, again, for the individual's health. I eat grass-fed, happy cows walking around on grass. It's much better nutritionally for me. Good, that's good for your health and maybe the few people that can actually afford it. But what about the rest of the world that can't afford grass-fed? What about the space that we actually have on this planet that wouldn't allow us to farm every single animal grass-fed and free range, So when I started thinking about that, so it was the ethical side of stuff that really hit me, and I was just like, well, I totally believe that we're an omnivorous species. So there's no doubt about it. We've lived this long because when there weren't any plants available, we were able to eat meat. When there wasn't any meat available, we were able to eat plants. Omnivorous means opportunistic feeders. Mm-hmm. So I believe that. Now, that was all well and good in days where we were having to hunt to survive, but now we're not having to hunt and survive. We're thriving, and we've got so much food, and certainly in the Western world, almost too much. It's sort of killing us. So it just made sense to me that the ethical argument was black and white for me, and that gave me my really strong why as to why I was doing this, and I think that's why I see a lot of people, sometimes they go vegan for a year or so or 6 months and then they fall off the wagon and then they go back to how they were doing, and a lot of the time I don't think they've had a strong enough reason as to why they're doing it in the first place. So for me, because it's not just based on in my health and stuff, it's something much bigger than my life and my taste buds. So just for instance, this week I found out I'm deficient in zinc from doing some blood testing, and I think that's down to potentially some stress, drinking maybe a bit too much coffee, and a few other bits and pieces that we won't go into now. But I want to try and fix my zinc deficiency naturally with plants, with supplements. Where there's a lot of people I'm seeing online now who are sort of saying why I'm no longer vegan. I'm not sure there's been a lot of these videos come out on YouTube quite recently. Right. And I think a lot of people are just suddenly going, this way of eating and living is no longer working for me, and they're just jacking it all in. And so my point is this, like, first of all, just because something's not working for you 100%, maybe it could still work for you 95%. So you're still getting 95% of the benefit. You're still putting out 95% of the benefit, but you're just doing what you need to support your health. So I want to try and, not... I think one of the things we're in danger of in our society is going all chips in or all chips out. It's this perfection that we look for, and if we don't have it, then we just don't bother. And I think it's really unhealthy. And I think that's what I'm really passionate about, is trying to kind of educate people and take the pressure off people so that they can just try and focus on improvement and progress. Rather than trying to be perfect overnight. Yeah. So you've been 4.5 years. 4.5 years. I've had a few eggs over the years. A couple of a little bit of dairy in the beginning, and when I was transitioning and stuff. There's always the odd occasion when someone gives you a cake and you find out there's some dairy in it. And try not to get sort of too anal about it when I can control the situation, but I'm 100% plant-based and will continue to be so for the foreseeable future. Going back to the omnivorous side of stuff and the hunter-gathering, I think the only time I would eat meat would be if I actually hunted and killed the animal myself, because I believe that if you're going to eat it, I think maybe you should be willing to roll up your sleeves and kill the animal and connect not only with life but with the death of that animal. And that is the circle of life on our planet. Things are dying and living and being reborn all the time. And I think that's part of the problem, is we have a massive disconnect from the animal that's given its life and died, and how it ends up on your plate.
Yeah.
In our society.
That is powerful. And that's something. So I'm not a vegan, but I try to eat about 95% plant-based, for sure. And I have had long periods of not eating any meat or any dairy and being completely vegan.
Yeah.
So I kind of dabble in and out, if you like. But
that's what I mean. Your actions are being positive.
Yeah.
Although you're not 100%, you don't have to be.
No. I can see myself being 100%. I
Cool.
can see it round the corner.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing. It's just like, work at it.
Yeah.
You'll find, if it's right for you, then it will present itself, and you'll work towards it naturally.
Yeah. It takes. Yeah, I think it's a progression, isn't it?
Totally. It takes some people a couple of years sometimes to fully transition, because there's lots to learn about food prep, where to get the food, what kind of things to eat, what kind of things not to eat. But then, there's a lot of psychology involved as well, in terms of social programming. We're used to going out to eat steaks with our mates or burgers with friends and stuff like that. So we're having to rewire all of that social programming that we might have lived with for many, many years.
Well, that comes back to identity that we're talking about, and that belonging.
Yeah,
to
that
a
label,
group,
like
a meat eating,
steak,
beer,
barbecue,
pie, whatever. Whatever your version of that is.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful. And that's probably the most powerful influence in our life. And we can have nice ideas about doing things, but until we attack that, you're not going to make a big change really in your life, I think.
No, absolutely,
I mean, so that's I always try and break things down really, really simple, because I pretty much flunked out of school. I'm a rugby playing ex-paratrooper. I've got to keep everything's got to be pretty base for me to understand what's going on. Yeah. But for me, it just makes so much sense to have most of your diet as a plant-based, completely plant-based, and not just for the ethical stuff, which I think is hugely important. Yeah. But a lot of people won't jump on that hook. For whatever reason, but from a health perspective, it just adds up. And I know for me, I had a big shift probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I read Rich Roll's book,
amazing book,
and since then I've been a huge fan of his work. And the people that he gets on his show have just opened my eyes to the sort of very unbalanced argument that we have around some of the quote unquote science. And like you say, it's so easy to find someone who backs up the corner that you want to think about that day.
I don't know if you saw Joe Rogan's podcast with Dr. Joel Kahn, who's a cardiologist, plant-based doctor, and Chris Kresser, who's a paleo kind of expert and functional medicine practitioner, who I listened to actually for years before going vegan. Oh, okay. And they literally argued back and forward for 3 hours on Joe Rogan's podcast, with studies, both having studies to back up what they were saying. And you got to the end of 3 hours, no one could really say conclusively, I'm right and you're wrong. And it does always come down to, I think, to the individual. And that's why I think, like you just said about the ethical side of stuff, I think it's the elephant in the room that no one talks about. And I think that's why I said that has to start becoming part of the conversation of health, because we can't necessarily differentiate between this is right and wrong, because there's so many genetic variations in the human gene pool, right? Ancient civilizations, we come from so many different, we've been tweaked and we've moved around, and someone who's maybe a white guy in Devon might even have 60% African genes in his genome, So I think because of that, there's always going to be slight differentiations, and there's never going to be one thing that fits 100% for 100% of the people. So I think to even try and argue that just seems like a waste of time to me. It's like, okay, well, what are the other factors maybe that we'd start having to look at? And I think and ethics is one of the first ones, I think.
Yeah.
For me, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's hugely important. It's easy to brush over as well.
Yeah.
And I think because people don't see it in their day-to-day lives and their individual health necessarily, or they can't connect it to their own individual health, and it gets brushed over quite easily, and we tend to live in the sort of day-to-day grind, which is a really shit way to think about things, anything really. But it's kind of how we live and work sometimes, isn't it? We get caught up in our own little bubble. We can't see the future. We don't have any clarity, and we're unable to see what's going on around us. And I think the ethical, environmental aspects of it, is kind of outside of our little bubble.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I always say it's. I think people find it hard to make that transition, and from an ethical perspective, because we've all got bills to pay. We've all got loads of different stresses going on in our life, and lots of people use food for comfort. And if someone's using food as a way of comforting themselves through all the stressful moments in their life, and then you're getting them to change that completely. Like, can you imagine the internal panic that you're going to go through when someone says, well, you've got to take that away now, you're not allowed that. And I think that's why it's harder for people to sometimes transition to a plant-based diet if it's not for specific my health reasons. If they can relate it to their direct health right now, then it's much easier, I think, for most people to kind of acknowledge. For me, I watched a couple of documentaries that just hit me at a right time in my life, where I was willing to acknowledge some facts and join a few dots together. And I watched a few documentaries, and I burst into tears watching them.
Which ones?
So first of all, the first one was Cowspiracy.
Yeah.
What I loved about Cowspiracy was that it approached it from the environmental viewpoint much more than the others, and that was never something I'd considered. It wasn't something that I'd like I said, join the dots together about. So for me to hear it from that angle just made me start to think. It made me start to think beyond my world, just my own individual world. It made me start to think, there's some choices that I might be making that might be affecting much more than just my life, So I watched that, and then I watched Gary Yourofsky's Best Speech You'll Ever Hear. I think he's retired now. He was an American animal activist, and he put out a lot of amazing content on YouTube. There's this seminars that he did in across some American universities. He's a very he's a force of nature. He's very doesn't pull any punches. Says some quite controversial stuff. But halfway through his lecture, some of the stuff he was saying just felt so logical and kind of compelling that, it kind of broke me a little bit. And he also mixed his talk in with a few clips from slaughterhouses and stuff like that. And I was just, it hit me. And it kind of, that was the beginning of the end then, once I kind of made that emotional connection, basically, to what was going on. And then Earthlings was the third one I watched. And that was all in the space of 10 days. And Earthlings is, if anyone's seen it, it's probably one of the most horrific in terms of those kind of documentaries. And I watched that, and that was it. I just made that sort of decision that for me, I wanted to live a life that was going to reduce the trauma and suffering it left behind, And that's been my reason ever since. And that's where a lot of my decisions are made from now. Yeah.
I think we've touched on it, but why is that so important for you?
Because I think, so I was thinking about this quite deeply a couple of weeks ago, because I was starting to question a few things. And I was thinking that I don't know why I'm here on this planet. You don't know why you're here, really. None of us know why we're here, really. So it's we're all focused on why are we here, why are we here, why are we here? And then I thought, well, maybe we should start thinking about what we're not here for. or what we're not here to do. And I thought, okay, if I can't work out why I'm here, maybe I should think more about what I don't want my life to be about. And for me, I thought, I don't want my life to be about unnecessary trauma and suffering as a baseline. Do you know what I mean? And so for me, that's where that sort of thought process came from. It's like, okay, I don't want that in my life, as little as I possibly can. There's going to be times when that's not possible. There's going to be times where eating a plant-based diet, or I may be eating avocado, or there's something that I'm eating that's got palm oil in it that's been grown with big monocultured crops that have, you know, devastated some species. And sometimes that happens, you know, and the more the population grows, even on a plant-based diet, that we're going to need bigger farms, which are going to damage, again, some species and stuff. So it's not perfect, but that's why I was just like, it reduces, my life reduces the trauma and suffering it leaves behind.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because what you've done, which I don't think many people that I'm aware of have done, in your thinking there, maybe even unwittingly, I don't know, but I think what appears to me that you've done is because we're all told find your why,
yeah.
You know, Simon Sinek and all his awesome work, and find your passion, find your why, and that's a really difficult thing to do. So you've in fact taken a very scientific approach, which is how do you prove an argument where you try to disprove it. So you've taken the opposite end of the argument, and so you've said, well, I'm not sure what my why is and why I'm here, which is kind of the boat we're all in. Absolutely.
We're all searching.
So let's look at the opposite side of that puzzle. Let's look at the opposite. Say, what am I not here to do?
Yeah.
And that's powerful. Really powerful. I've not really heard that before.
Yeah.
So really interesting.
Cool. Well, it helped me massively, because I think I'm still going through it right now. I'm going through a little bit of an evolution. I am questioning, you know, a little bit about what I'm doing and where I'm going with things. And I think when you go through those points in your life, they're good, as difficult as they are, and you feel like sometimes you're banging your head against a brick wall and you just can't work things out. They're also amazingly beneficial for you to work things out. I can't remember I was reading something the other day, and we all have to. We go through so many processes in our lives, right? And there's always a point in a process that you feel like you don't know whether you're going backwards or forwards, sideways, backwards, what you're doing is right or not right. And you're in utter confusion sometimes as to what you're doing and why you're doing it. But that's part of the process. Actually, what is going on there subconsciously is you working stuff out. And we label that as a bad thing. But actually, it's an actual part of that process. It's a process in itself, but that we don't give much value to because it's difficult and it's painful and it's confusing, sort of thing. So I think that's what I was going through at that moment in time, and figuring stuff, flipping stuff around, and figuring that out from that perspective just gave me a little bit of an anchor, so I didn't feel like I was all over the place trying to figure this big thing out that I have no idea about right now. Well, okay, what's going to give me a little bit of comfort and a little bit of, okay, that's who I am. That's my foundation.
And it's a sound scientific principle.
Yeah.
Don't do what you don't want, what you know.
Yeah.
Move away from what you know is not your why and not right for you.
Yeah.
Move away from that, and scientifically, you're going to move towards the object that you want, even if you're not sure how it's defined.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I've found that over the last couple of years, through different sort of spiritual experiences and practices and stuff, that, and you know, it's a bit cliche, is, you know, find your most authentic self. And I think for years I struggled with being a sensitive sort of guy. You know, I struggled with that and thought it was a negative side of me. But actually, I came to realize that actually it's the most positive strength that I have, actually. And once I started embracing that, and focusing on my most authentic self and focusing on that sort of purpose, that helped me sort of to be more comfortable with my direction in life, I think. Yeah. And I think working that out, what we've just been talking about, I think that's also helped me become more aligned with everything. From a base, you know, from, okay, this is where I'm firing from now.
So yeah, well, So you certainly seem like you've kind of worked out the directions of things that are coming at you.
Definitely.
And how to kind of deflect what you know for sure is not what you want to identify with.
So it's really important. I do a lot of thinking about all of this stuff because of what I'm doing and pushing, and about the plant-based nutrition and stuff, and because of my ability to sit on the fence and see both sides of an argument, it's really important for me that I really get down and get clear with why I'm doing what I'm doing, and consider all the different opposing arguments that are going to come to me, and having done the thinking in order to kind of prepare myself for moments where people are going to be questioning your choices and why you're living the way you're living and stuff like that. So I think it's that's quite analytical as a professional. Yeah.
You need to be able to sort of back your corner and kind of but also understand what's going on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I just want to flip back before we move on to sort of more quickfire stuff that I want to get onto. I just want to flip back.
Yeah, it was quite deep. That wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a bit of a journey, but incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And it's so evident how much work you've done on yourself and how much deep thinking. And I don't know if that's always been a case for you. I've been to sort of quite philosophical and deep thinking.
I'm passionate. I like philosophical conversations.
Me too. Well, partly, but it's certainly evident in what you're saying that you've really looked at it from kind of a few different angles and trying to suss things out, which is amazing. But just flipping back, so many questions popping into my head. I'm forgetting most of them, but just flipping back to the plant-based stuff. So I agree with everything you say, and I think there's so much confusion is used as a tool to keep us confused and to distract us and to sell us things that aren't keeping us on the path. And for me, it's kind of the most basic thing you can look at, which is, I guess, kind of what you're saying of kind of like what I don't want to be associated with, what I know is not going to help. And let's start with that. Around the plant-based stuff is, you classically, certainly for me growing up, you think, right, well, I need to go to the gym, I want to add muscle, I'm going to eat chicken and broccoli. Yeah. And you're not really thinking about that. Now, from my perspective now, anyone who's going down to their local supermarket and buying the whatever meat that they've got in there, the quality and of what you're putting into your body is just crazy.
Yeah.
Like the toxins, the antibiotics, and the actual quality of the proteins going into it as well just doesn't make sense. And that's an anchor for me. Like you were saying, that's an anchor for me. Well, what should I be putting into my body? Well, I know it's not these things. Let's start with that.
I like. And just to completely disassociate my emotional reason for doing this, like I think if we were looking at an animal that's been factory farmed, that's lived a really poor quality life in a cage, that's been probably very stressed, maybe diseased, may have had a lot of antibiotics, other things pumped into it. It's been fed on feed that doesn't contain all the nutrients that it needs. So it's been supplemented as well with, micronutrients to give its meat the right amount of micronutrients. Because that's what happens as well. B12, a lot of animals are fed B12 because they can't get it from their food. That's another topic. But yeah, so you've got this animal that's lived this life, and its life and its experience and its stress and everything is its flesh, is its body, and that body dies and gets slaughtered in a way that again creates more fear and maybe stress response. And then you as a consumer are consuming all of that whole history, that story, and that's going into your body, and your body's breaking all of that down, all those proteins down, all those cells down, and it's reabsorbing it, So just from a kind of, looking at it kind of spiritually, I guess, once you start looking at it like that, you think, well, do I want to take all of that into my body? And of course, that's when the argument of people talking, about free range and grass fed and, and happier animals, does come into the argument then, in terms of if you're just looking at individual health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. It's a minefield. We could sit here all day and not really get far in terms of discussing it. But I think, and like you say, like the Joe Rogan stuff, it kind of goes round and round and round, doesn't it?
Does.
And you just don't really know what side to sit on and what to do and what action to take. And that's kind of that's the space actually that a lot of people are left in, and ended up bouncing around trying to find their own identity. Especially around foods, and then they, emotional states get linked to certain things, and certainly the marketing's all around emotion, and that's trying to link us, trying to anchor us to certain things, and that's another aspect of it, apart from our own actual shit that we've going on, and our own sort of like struggle to identify who we are.
Absolutely.
It's
we're in interesting times, aren't we? Really, like I've had these conversations recently with people, and I think probably symptomatic of being young and growing up anyway, but life growing up in the 80s and 90s and stuff just felt like we knew what life was all about and how it was lived and how you were supposed to live and stuff, whereas now it just feels like we're at a point in our evolution and things are changing so quickly in terms of technology, food, all these different arguments, and I think we're in a period of time that is quite uncertain in terms of where we're going. And I think technology changes so quickly at the moment as well that it makes us question maybe what we're doing for a living as well, because maybe in a few years' time things are going to move so quickly that I'm not going to have a job anymore in that particular field. Really interesting book I've just read. I can't remember his name. He wrote Homo Deus and Sapiens. It's called 21 Lessons in the 21st Century.
Right.
It's definitely a book worth getting, and it explores all of those questions, that are going on with politics and technology and stuff. It's quite fascinating time. I mean, it's unsettling, but it's also really exciting at the same time. I think, it's great to be involved at a time in our evolution that's going through great change, and with that comes the potential to create something amazing from that. If we make the right decisions and choices. Now.
I think I think it can be viewed as very scary because we need certainty in our life. But you're right. It's the disruptive age. Technology is disrupting. People are completely catered for in terms of their basic needs certainly in the developed world. So we don't have the pressures that our grandparents had. I mean, my grandmother couldn't feed my father, so he had to go to an orphanage, and I can't even process that happening. They lived in tents for 6.5 years. So it's so alien to me. It's so alien. So to try and work things out like that, but we don't have those pressures. We just don't have those pressures. And everything else on top of that, in terms of all the disruption that technology's brought in, and hyper connectedness, it's a really interesting time. But because we don't have the pressures, we can kind of fall off the cliff of sort of ill health, unhealth, and all the sort of negative attributes associated with modern life. Or the flip side of that is all the amazing kind of opportunities that are out there, and the simple fact that we don't have to worry about where our next meal's coming from. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Total privilege. We're at the most luckiest time in history, really. And I think we can spend a lot of time looking at how bad the world is and there's all this wrong, but there's so many statistics out there. There's less people being killed in wars and conflict now than ever before, although it may seem, because of the news, that what we hear about is wars and killing, but actually it's much less statistically. And pretty much everything is improved. So it's worth keeping a positive
Adam,
slant on that.
We're going to jump through to some quick fire stuff.
Nice.
And I just want to be respectful of your time, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with a finishing piece as well. Cool. So, from your perspective as a professional now, what are the biggest what's the biggest thing that you think people are missing when they sort of think about their own health? They you've got an experience of guys coming to you or girls that are coming to you, and what's the biggest sort of question mark that they have that they don't realise they have in terms of their own health? What can't they see?
I think it's overcomplicating things, and not. One of the big things I used to talk about was consistency and commitment. Mm-hmm. Like that's the key to achieving a goal, is consistency and commitment. And I think in this day and age, it's really easy to want everything overnight. And when when I look at setting people's habits, you're looking at kind of trying to set people with long-term outcome goals. So looking at what actually they want to achieve, what that destination looks like, but then making sure that people are actually setting behavioral habits or changing their behavioral habits, because it's those behavioral habits that you do every day that add up to achieve your outcome goal. I like to look at an outcome goal as your brick wall, and your daily behavioral habits as your bricks. Yeah. And every day you're putting bricks in your wall with your habits. And so I think a lot of people, I don't think I think they try and overcomplicate things in terms of trying to achieve a goal. And one of the things I also talk about is if it's not simple, it's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. And the more we overcomplicate our nutrition, the more we overcomplicate our training, the less sustainable it is, and the less effective it is in the long run. Yeah. Yeah.
Powerful. That's there's so many powerful lessons that you've given us. Thank you very much. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That it has to be simple to be effective.
Yeah, definitely. And I see a lot. People program hop a lot. One week, one magazine's told them that this is the best workout ever, and then they'll start that workout, and then the next week they'll read something else, and it'll say to them, this is the best thing to do. And then before you know it, you're bouncing backward and forward between different workouts, and you're not applying that consistency, and you're not committing to one path. And it's that commitment that you make to that path from start to finish that teaches you and enables you to learn from that experience, and being able to see, okay, well, that I now understand what works for me and my body, and then being able to apply it or tweak it, in the future. So I think it's people just not being clear enough on what their goals are, and kind of committing to them, I think, long term, basically, and then they wonder why they're not seeing results.
Yeah.
Most programs work, but
I agree with you. And you touched on something earlier that just popped into my mind on the same lines as you touched on your own journey more recently around understanding the sort of enjoyment you can get from the process versus the goal. And how you've got to, and it's something that people overlook. And I know that I know Tony Robbins has got a quote that he says, 80% of your life is spent in process. Yeah. So you better start loving the process you're in and the struggle, and embrace the suck, as the American military says. Yeah. Is that what they say? Is it nice? Embrace the suck, because that is life. That is it. The process is your life. Now, if you're hating the process, and you've got this long sort of this pipe dream at the end of it, this drop in the ocean that you're like, this is what I'm living for, but I'm hating today, then chances are, firstly, you won't get there, and you won't be able to get any clarity over what the actions you're taking, and nothing becomes meaningful because it's not enjoyable. You don't understand the process. You don't like it. Yeah, definitely. And you're labeling it bad.
You're also putting loads of pressure on yourself. Because you feel like you're failing all the time because you're not achieving this perfection. I have it with clients at the moment who kind of maybe a bit younger in their years, and who are just kind of really getting into their training, and they've set this goal and they're on this program, and they might catch the flu or something, and it knocks them down for a couple of days, and they're just like, oh, I want to get back in the gym and start training now, and I've got to hit my goals, because if I don't, then... And I'm just like, trust me, take a few days out, watch some box sets, allow your body to heal, then get back in the gym. The gym's not going anywhere, and trust me, this goal that you're aiming for will move constantly. Like I've transformed my body so many times over the last 20 years. I lost count now, and every time that I went through this transformation process, in my mind I was like, oh, this end goal's, that's going to be the one, that's going to be the thing, that's going to be the look that I'm going for. And it's never materialized. Even when I've got into the best shape of my life doing fitness shows, there's always something that you want to improve on. Mm-hmm. There's always something that, if that's all you're focusing on, you're never going to be quite happy with. Again, if you're looking for that perfection.
Yeah. I mean, life's a journey.
Yeah, it is, and it's so cliche. But last year for me, that was the biggest lesson I've learned in the last couple of years, was understanding about process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So many more questions in my mind.
One question leads to another.
Yeah, of course it does. Just to finish then, the last question I'm going to ask you before I sort of wrap this up is, what do you think the most important factor is in health?
Cool.
If it was going to be one single factor.
Well, balance. I think, and I'd like, because obviously you asked me that question, and so I'm trying to answer it. I'm thinking about the individual, and then I'm also, obviously, because it's important to me to think about the greater good as well, in a way. So what's the thing how does life thrives when everything's in balance? And that goes the same with the world, with every living being, with every living organism, with human beings, with our training, with our nutrition, with our mind, So I think it's always finding a way to bring yourself back into balance. Like, I'm not a believer that we should always be in balance, because we need to get out of balance to push ourselves to greater heights. And like, if we always stay in balance, then we're never going to evolve. But I think the key thing is to push yourself, but then always to try and strive to kind of come back when you no longer have to be in that kind of extreme side of things. Yeah. So,
that's good. I like it. Sort of sideways answer to the question.
I know. Yeah, and one other thing my granddad said, it's a really good quote, was everything in moderation, including moderation. Right?
I like it. Yeah. That's
so
awesome.
If you do everything moderately, then nothing's really going to affect your health that badly. But also at the same time, every so often, go nuts and enjoy life.
Awesome. I love it. No, I love it. Yeah. Everything to extreme, including rest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So what I found incredibly valuable, I mean, we could go on, but what I found incredibly valuable, and the bits that I've really picked up, the three kind of lessons that I've learned from you, are how the power of choice and decision, those two, that as a sort of have allowed you to sort of stay on the path and really draw the positives out of things and choose the path that you're going on, the trajectory on, the decision the decisions you're making, and the direction that you're going in. And that's been really powerful, that I pulled out of what you said in the first part of the conversation. And what I absolutely loved was, I don't know what my why is or my passion is necessarily. I don't have complete clarity on that, because it's ever evolving. It's a kind of a cloudy, fuzzy sort
constant
of notion.
state of flux. Yeah.
So what do I not want?
Yeah.
What do I know is not pointing me in the right direction? Is not pulling me on in the direction I want to go? And I think that's a really powerful tool to look at what you know for a fact. So trying to disprove a theory by looking at the opposite side of the equation is really interesting. And I think that's something people don't do. Actually, I think people are they just try and create this, create clarity around something that perhaps is almost impossible to create that clarity around.
And I think the thing is, we're seeing these days is that there's not enough kind of critical thinking going on, and we don't spend enough time in the middle ground or the grey area, and that's a lot of the time I think where the kind of more of the truth is, you know. We're always looking for that. This is right. This is wrong.
Yeah, the
well,
black
maybe
and white.
The black, you know.
Yeah, more recently, I'm always thinking along the lines of now. Certainly, I'm a bit more mature. I think what holds value is intangible in life. Yet we seek the tangible. We seek the car maybe, or the house, or we seek the permanent. But what holds true value is impermanent. It's the relationships we have. That's really what life's about. And those aren't tangible. Those are intangible. Those aren't physical beings, physical things that we can purchase or we can hold or we can stick in our living room. So conceptually it's quite hard to realise that. So I think understanding that the intangible is actually what you value. Yeah, definitely. And that impacts every area of your life, because the newest iPhone isn't going to bring you value. It's its ability to connect you to other humans, which actually is intangible. Yeah, absolutely. It's the human being at the end of it, ultimately. I think the service industry that we're in sometimes it is intangible, because we're talking about goals, dreams, enrolling people in their dreams, coaching them on how they can be better. All that soft stuff certainly seems intangible, but it holds intrinsic value. Yeah, absolutely. Yet what we see people doing is going for something that's physical, that doesn't actually hold anything, but yet they get drawn to a physical asset that they want in their life, as opposed to perhaps not having they'll have the latest iPhone, but they won't spend money on, I don't know, on their health or food. Exactly. The basics. That's a common thing. Awesome. Magpie effect, like getting the flashy. Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and I just want you to let people know about your book, about where they can find out about you and how they can engage with you and all that sort of stuff. But before you do that, I just want to say thank you very much, and thanks for having me, dude. Total respect for your story, where you've come from, the struggles that you've had, the surgery, the ups and downs, and how such a strong and awesome human being you are to pass through those so well, and the journey that you're on is really special. And for the guys and girls that are listening, I think Adam is jacked. He's got an awesome physique and he's a good looking guy, but he's been through all these struggles, and I think a lot of people sort of see professionals where they don't really connect with them and they don't really understand. And standing here in front of you, hearing your story is really powerful, because it allows me and hopefully the audience as well to connect with you on a much deeper level. So thank you very much. Thanks, man. No, appreciate that. So where can we find out? So you can find me on my website, theplantpoweredpt.com. There's also some links on there. My book is being crowdfunded through the crowdfunding publisher called Unbound. The book's looking like it's probably going to be called Plant Powered. That's currently at 22% funded. So anything you can pledge to support that, I'll be massively, massively grateful, or sharing it on social media. You can find me on Instagram. I hang out there most of the time. It's the Plant Powered PT. And YouTube, Adam Stansbury. You'll be able to find me on there. So awesome. Great. So, guys, I hope you do look Adam up, engage with Adam, and sort of digest some of his content. And that book sounds awesome. I've listened to the first chapter that you put up on your Instagram TV. Thanks, it's really powerful, really, really powerful. And we very, very lightly touched on some of those factors here today. So the nice thing is that the book is taking it. The crowdfunding process does take quite a while, but the good thing about that is it won't actually go into production until it's 100% funded. So actually, whilst this process is going on, I'm learning a lot more as well and having more of these kind of conversations. So it just means that the content that I've already written for the book is just going to get better until it's 100% funded. So
process.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And you're learning on the way.
Yeah.
And we're all on a journey. aren't
All
we?
evolving.
Absolutely, we're all evolving, and there's no point thinking otherwise, really.
No.
Awesome. Okay. Guys, if you liked what Adam and I were talking about and you like the podcast, please share it on social, subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, all that good stuff, and review us as well. Thank you very much for listening. Namaste. Awesome. So guys, what did you think of Adam? Pretty impressive story, right? And he's doing some amazing things in the health space now, and really opening people's eyes to what's possible. And has it got you wondering about a plant-based diet? I'd love to know your feedback on this episode, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Lots more coming right around the corner, so stay posted for the next episode, and like and share to your heart's content. And we shall speak soon. Take care, brothers and sisters.